Hi, my name is Kristen. This is Kristen Craves Books. So I just want to film a quick intro to this video. This is my second bookshelf tour on the channel. My first one was about a year ago, and my shelves look completely different since then, so I will link that video down below. And I try to have some organization on these shelves by genre and then by author, but to be honest, it's kind of just wherever I can fit a book at this point. I do need more shelves, but it's upsetting because these shelves I've had since I was a teenager, and I have no idea where to find them anymore. They probably don't make them anymore, so I can't get matching ones, which is very sad. I love the ladder style of them. So that is really all I have to tell you. I'm going to show you just all the books that are on there, some of the knickknacks and things like that, and I hope you enjoy it. I forgot to mention in the intro that every book on these shelves is a book that I have read and loved. I try to keep only the books that I love, and I want my shelves to be a reflection of my reading tastes. So this first shelf is my nonfiction shelf, and I tend to listen to my nonfiction on audio, so I don't actually own a ton of my favorites, but I do love all the ones that I do have. And I will start with showing you some of the knickknacks that I have on here. So this is a picture of my cat Maggie, who passed away in October, so you might see a few pictures of her in later videos when I do future shelf tours and things like that. I've got photos of her everywhere. And then I don't have a ton of pop figures, but I love this one. This is David Rose from Schitt's Creek. Just adore him. And speaking of Schitt's Creek, these are actually custom cards from a small business. He designed these David and Patrick baseball cards, and he does a ton of these baseball cards of actual baseball players. I have like Bryce Harper and other players in here as well. But this is a special card that he did of one of my favorite episodes of Schitt's Creek. So I will leave a link to his shop down below because I think a few of you might be interested in that. And then we have my favorite candle. This is By the Fireplace by Replica. It does smell exactly like you're sitting by a bonfire, and I just love that. And now on to the books. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. This is a signed edition, but I highly recommend the audio for this one. The Office, The Untold Story of the Greatest Sitcom of the 2000s by Andy Green. Any fan of the American version of The Office has to read this one. The Greatest Love Story Ever Told by Megan Mullally and Nick Offerman. Me by Elton John, another one you have to listen to on audio. Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. Again, any of these celebrity memoirs, highly recommend them on audiobook. Naturally Tan by Tan France. And the last one in that stack is Eat a Peach by David Chang. A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier by Ishmael Bea. Helter Skelter, The True Story of the Manson Murders by Vincent Bugliosi and Kurt Gentry. Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. Capote, a biography by Gerald Clark. Columbine by Dave Cullen. Catch and Kill, Lies, Spies, and a Conspiracy to Protect Predators by Ronan Farrow. This is a proof of Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. It is actually one of the first ARCs that I ever received. Furiously Happy, a funny book about horrible things by Jenny Lawson. I love all of her memoirs. Heartberries by Therese Marie Melhout. I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara. Know My Name by Michelle Miller. I Am, 17 Brushes with Death by Maggie O'Farrell. Save Me the Plums, my gourmet memoir by Ruth Rachel. The Victorian and the Romantic, a memoir, a love story, and a friendship across time by Nell Stevens. The Girl Who Smiled Beads, a story of war and what comes after by Clementine Womaria and Elizabeth Wheel. Educated by Tara Westover. And then finally, Disability Visibility, first-person stories from the 21st century, edited by Alice Wong. This next shelf is a mix of romances, and then I have my thrillers, horror, mysteries. I don't own a lot of those. Again, I listen to those on audiobook and read ebook, so these are just some of my all-time favorites. And for these, I often buy them after I've already read and loved them. So I have showed these bookmarks a few times before in a few places, but these are bookmarks by Steph's Book Therapy on Etsy, and I will leave her shop down below. But I think she's been overwhelmed with orders lately, so get them while you can. And these are the characters from Abby Jimenez's books. So Josh from The Friend Zone, Jason from Happily Ever After playlist, Adrian from Life's Too Short, and then Daniel, my favorite. He is from Abby Jimenez's newest book that is not even out yet. It's called Part of Your World, but I read in New York. So you won't see a finished copy on this shelf, but I will definitely be buying one the day it comes out. And then I just have a couple candles on here. This is actually a Valentine's Day present, and it is by Diptyque, and the scent is Roses. in this limited edition design, and I just love it. You're gonna see a lot of candles on this shelf. Those are my things, books and candles. I feel as though this candle was one of the first bookish candles out there and what kind of started the craze, and this is Bookstore by Book Lovers Soy Candle. I'm not sure if they're still around, but if they are, we'll link this below because it really does have a scent of the bookstore. I can't even put it to words, but they say the notes are mahogany, leather, and coffee, and I think that is accurate. It's actually Frostbeard Studio is the company. This first one is actually a proof and one of the first Tessa Bailey books I ever read, and that is Love Her or Lose Her. You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I need to get the first and third book in that series. The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. The Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. And Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. And then the newest book to this shelf is Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. A Certain Appeal by Vanessa King, which was the first book I read in 2022 and the perfect way to start the year. If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy, their first book in the Meant to Be series. Sweet Hand by N.G. Peltier. And then these next two, I wouldn't consider them romance, but they are labeled as romance on Goodreads and other places, so I do put them here. And the first one is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, and then In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. And now moving on to my mysteries, thrillers, horrors, that kind of thing. The first one is The Push by Ashley Audrain. We actually went to the same university. All's Well by Mona Awad. Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, which is also just one of the prettiest books I own. I believe the author herself did the illustrations throughout. The Air Affair by Jasper Ford, which is the first book in the A Thursday Next series. My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. And The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Those are my two favorite books of his. The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell, who is one of my favorite mystery authors, and I actually got this book in the Once Upon a Book Club book box, which I do have a code for. It's Craves10 with a K. I will leave that linked down below. Misery by Stephen King. It's the only Stephen King book I am interested in or have ever read. The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Still Life by Louise Penny, and this is the first book in the Inspector Gamache series. Night Film by Marisha Pessel, and this is told through mixed media, which I just love. And then last but not least is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I'm sure you've been curious about this print. It is the layout of Joey and Chandler and Rachel and Monica's apartments from Friends. This was a gift from my best friend, and I just love it. And if I can find the Etsy shop that did this, I will link that below. I will ask him where he got it. Next up is my historical fiction shelf. Surprise, surprise, we have another candle. This is Wood Sage and Sea Salt by Jo Malone. Then we probably have my favorite Funko Pop, and this is Marilyn Monroe, obviously. And this last candle is by Volupsa, and the scent is Japanese Plum Bloom. And I just love these containers. So we're starting strong with The Bone People by Sharabala. This is highly underrated. The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. The Widow of Rose House by Diana Biller, which I really could have put in the horror section or in the romance, but I settled on historical fiction. The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. And The Pull of the Stars, also by Emma Donoghue. Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. The Glittering Hour by Iona Gray. The Kite Runner and The Mountains Echoed. And Sea Prayer, all by Khalid Hosseini. Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Maris. Hamnet and Judith by Maggie O'Farrell. The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill, which is one of my favorite books of all time, as you can probably see from the tabs. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Daisy Jones and the Six. And Malibu Rising, all by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Michelle Richardson, and this is actually an ARC, and I do have an e-ARC of the sequel, which comes out later this year. Lincoln and the Barlow by George Saunders. The Underground Railroad and The Nickel Boys, both by Colson Whitehead. And then last on the shelf is the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton, and this is actually an ARC and one of my most prized possessions. I adore this book. And then finally on this bottom shelf, I had to use a pile of books as a tripod, so I hope it's sturdy enough. This is just kind of a mix. I've got contemporary in here and just things I didn't know where to shelf. So, but just some of my absolute favorites. And I'm using this as a bookend right now, but it is also by Volupsa and it is a larger size. And this is Apple Blue Clover. The Mothers by Britt Bennett. Yinka, Where Is Your Husband by Lizzie Demola Blackburn. Bitter Orange, Swimming Lessons, and Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller, who is one of my favorite authors. The Ensemble by Aja Gabel. Less by Andrew Sean Greer. Homegoing and Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jesse. The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. An American Marriage by Tahari Jones. Luster by Raven Lalani. A River Runs Through It and Other Stories by Norman MacLean, which is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. Life of Pi by Jan Martel. The Queen of Hearts by Kimmery Martin. Conversations with Friends. And Normal People by Sally Rudy. The Subtweet by Vivek Shura. All My Puny Sorrows. And Women Talking by Miriam Taves. Tin Man by Sarah Winman. Supper Club by Laura Williams, which is such a weird book. I would not recommend it for everybody, but I really loved it. And finally, Sing Unburied Sing by Jasmine Ward. So my battery died, and this is a different day, so the lighting might actually be better than yesterday. But this is my Greek mythology and Greek mythology retelling shelf and my fantasy. So this is a really fun one of my favorites. Speaking of favorites, this might be my favorite candle. I have a lot of favorites, but how funny is this one? It says You Go Glen Coco, and this is from Candiers, the company. And technically this is supposed to be a Christmas candle, but I keep it out all year round because I just think that is hilarious. Obviously, a quote from Mean Girls. And then there's another picture of my cat, Maggie. We are starting with a few graphic novels. This is The Iliad by Gareth Hines, and I think this is a good introduction into the Iliad if you want to get more into Greek myth retellings and you don't know the backstory. This is a good place to start. And here's a good example of some of the artwork if you're curious. And then of course, Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. This is volume 1. Volume 2 and volume 3 are supposed to come out this year. And once again, here's a look at the artwork. Greek Mythology, The Gods, Goddesses, and Heroes Handbook by Liv Albert. And again, this is a great book to read if you want to get into Greek mythology. And these gorgeous illustrations are done by Sarah Richard. I should mention that the Greek mythology section, a few of these I haven't read yet. So I have not read The Iliad by Homer. And this is the Caroline Alexander translation. I also have the audiobook of this one, and I've heard it's fantastic. And then I have Mythos and Heroes, both by Stephen Fry, and both books I still need to read. Now everything else on this shelf I have read. So starting with The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, The Song of Achilles, and Circe, both by Madeline Miller. And now moving on to just fantasy. This is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. A Natural History of Dragons, a Memoir of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. Piranesi by Susanna Clark. The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook. The Inheritance of Orchidia Divina by Zoraida Cordova. Magic Lessons. The Rules of Magic. Practical Magic. And The Book of Magic, all by Alice Hoffman. Jade City by Fonda Lee. Lanny by Max Porter. Year 1 by Nora Roberts. Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford. The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. And then I have one random graphic novel here called Fried Catchers by Jeff Lemire. And here is the art in that one if you're curious. Moving on to my sci-fi shelf, which is looking a little sparse. I love sci-fi, but I don't own as much as I thought I did, so definitely room to grow here. Another candle from Diptyque in a limited edition packaging. This was a Christmas present. And then I zoomed you in on, I guess you would call this a bookend that I received from the advent calendar from Once Upon a Book Club. And it just looks like a woman reading a book holding up this stack of books falling on her, and I love it. I get so many comments on it. It is adorable. And I do think you can probably buy it individually in the shop while supplies last. If I can find it, I will leave that linked below for you. We are starting with my favorite graphic novel series. I love sci-fi graphic novels, and this is volume 1 in the Descender series, and it's called Tin Stars, and it's by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Wynn. And this is volume 2 called Machine Moon. And I do own volumes 3 and 4 and plan to read them this month, so they will end up on this shelf very soon. A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I love Becky Chambers, but I actually only own one of her books. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. The Humans. And The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Never Let Me Go. The Remains of the Day. And Claire and the Sun, all by Kazuo Ishiguro. And The Remains of the Day is not sci-fi, but I couldn't bear to break his books up. I have this box set of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and that includes the 5th season, The Obelisk Gate, which I still have to read, and The Stone Sky, which is the last book in the trilogy. The History of Bees by Maha Lund, The Water Cure by Sophie McIntosh. You can probably tell by how beat up this book is that it's my favorite series of all time, the Themis Files, starting with Sleeping Giants, Waking Gods, and Only Human, and that series is by Sylvain Neuvel. I also loved The Test by Sylvain Neuvel, which is a short story. The Martian and Project Hail Mary, both by Andy Weir. And then ending the shelf with one of the weirdest books I've ever read, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Now moving on to my YA section. I have 2 shelves of YA. No rhyme or reason to these really, so we'll just get right to it. Here's another candle by Candier, and this is supposed to be a fall candle, but I leave it up all year round because I just love it. It says, if you were a spice girl, you'd be pumpkin spice. And then The Sandlot is one of my favorite movies, and this is my favorite character from The Sandlot, and that is Benny. And I also have his baseball card. Ace of Spades by Frida Abike Amide. Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley, which is my favorite book that I've read so far this year. Starfish by Kimi Dawn Bowman. Forever Birchwood by Danielle Daniel, which I just read and we'll talk about more in my February wrap-up. 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston, which is one of my go-to holiday romance recommendations. Pet by Kweki Emezi. To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. And as you can see here, I have a stack of my Tiffany D. Jackson novels, starting with Let Me Hear a Rhyme, which was the first book of hers that I ever read, and is very different from her other stuff, not as dark. Allegedly, White Smoke, Grown, and Monday's Not Coming, which is my favorite book of hers. And then I do have Blackout, which is an anthology by Danielle Clayton, Tiffany G. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon. The Names They Gave Us by Emily Lord. The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore, which was the first arc that I ever received. I received a bundle of 3 arcs, and this was in there, and I just adore this book. Definitely one of my most cherished books on my shelf. Miss Meteor by Taylor K. Miha and Anna Marie McLemore. Again, I got this in the Once Upon a Book Club book box. Dumplin', Puddin', and Pumpkin, all by Julie Murphy, and Pumpkin is definitely my favorite in this series. And then last but not least on the shelf is one of my favorite YA books of all time, I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. Okay, so we're on the bottom of my shelves now, and this is just more YA, some more contemporary, and then my fantasy sci-fi. And the only thing I have on here is something you can't see very well, but it is a photo of my brother and I when we were kids. The Beauty That Remains by Ashley Woodfolk. Punching the Air by E.B. Zaboyd and Yusuf Salam. The Hate You Give. And Concrete Rose, both by Angie Thomas. Sadie and The Project, both by Courtney Summers. And I just found out she has a book coming out later this year, which is very exciting. Pride and Premeditation by Tirzah Price, and obviously this is a Pride and Prejudice cozy mystery retelling. You Bring the Distant Near by Matali Perkins, which was another arc that came with the Wild Beauty arc that I received, and this book is entirely underrated. Definitely check it out, especially if you like Homegoing by Ya Jesse. I feel like this is the YA version of that. The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag, which is a gorgeous graphic novel. And here is the artwork. Lore by Alexander Bracken, which I think I enjoyed more than most people did. Songs of Race and Ruin, and A Psalm of Storms and Silence, both by Roseanne A. Brown. And I do want to mention, if you see a stack of books behind there, those are just all my Mitch Albom books. I don't know where to put them, so that's where they hide for now. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. The Gilded Ones by Namita Forna. The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. Now onto the series that I probably gush about the most. This is Ray Bear by Jordan Ifweko. And Redemptor, the sequel. And I also have the UK edition of Ray Bear. I need to track down the UK edition of Redemptor. The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Schreffer, which is also underrated. I adore this book so much. An Arc of a Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. And then ending on a good note, Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I figured I'd span my shelves for you while I sign off. I hope you enjoyed this bookshelf tour. I had such a fun time filming this. I definitely need some more bookshelves, so if you have any recommendations, link them below. I know everybody loves the Billy bookcases, so I might just end up with those. But I am sad that I have to move away from these or find another spot for them, because they are from my teenage years and I just love the way they look. So thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you all again soon, and bye for now.